You see this every day, and I don't get me. I tell you, every time I go into these waters, people start jerking around, having this reaction. Oh, you're a Putin apologist. No, I'm not. The guy's evil for doing this. He should pay a price for doing this. Okay, please play that soundbite now and then. What I'm going to say here is, it is true whether we want to accept it or not. Right now, you don't know what to believe coming out. You don't know for sure coming out of there. Yeah. Why? Because Putin has an agenda. He's got his propaganda machine, Larry Gamo, and Zelensky's got his outcome that he wants, and he's got his propaganda machine going. So,
Zelensky was a stand-up comedian. Did you get those jokes from him?
No, I did not. I don't think he's probably in the mood to tell them either. Yeah, but you know what else? He was it's just ironic, that part of his life. He went from a comedian to a TV show. And in the TV show, one of the plot twists was that he became president of the Ukraine. And so it was like, life imitated art. And here he is. And by a lot of folks measure, analysts, they think he's the second coming of Churchill. He's refusing to leave to leave Kyiv, which is soon to be attacked. It's the writing's on the wall. The anaconda has surrounded Kyiv, and the squeezing is about to begin. Guillermo, my question here to start this thing off is, how far right now, after 14, 15 days into this war, how far do you think Putin's going to go? Do you think he's ready to do scorched earth, all of these massive bombs to really kill scores, if not more, of civilians, to do whatever it takes to have victory?
Have you ever made a bad investment, Alan?
Oh yeah, lots of it.
It's almost like a bad investment. And I think there's people that when they make a bad investment or they invest in something where they get to a certain point in time when they feel like they can't back out. You're so far in and it didn't pan out. When you dream of opening a business, you dream of sitting on wads of cash. You dream on moving into a nicer neighborhood, driving a nicer car, you nicer clothes, and then reality starts to set in. And I've met a lot of people in my lifetime in the business sector that have spent so much money doing the same thing, and the investment doesn't pan out. Putin is sitting there. He had ideas of grandeur. He thought this was going to be quick. It was going to be easy. He was going to be able to overwhelming show of force. He's Putin. He's been dreaming this up. He's been thinking this up in his mind this entire time. He is too far in. When you ask the question, how far is he going to take it? He's going to take it as far as he can. He doesn't care about his people. He doesn't care about sanctions. He doesn't care. Remember, and similarly, like you just said, you have all these world leaders. And well, maybe you didn't say it, but I was thinking it when you were saying you have these world leaders and there's really a disconnect. There's a disconnect between those people that are in office and the citizens that they govern. There's a disconnect between the Biden-Harris administration, who all drive government cars. They get gassed up. They don't feel the pump and the pressure at the pump. And then you have all of us that are being governed. Then you have Putin. And you have his people starting to get shut out of everything. He doesn't really care about them. He's surrounded. He's insular. He's got money. He's going to be fine. And then you have the people in Ukraine. Zelensky, he's hunkering down. He has protection. He's being fed. He's got media. And then you have the people that are fleeing their country. So Zelensky and Putin are really going to go. They're both on a course. They're going to take it as far as they can. But at the end of the day, it's the average folk. It's the average Joe that are really just suffering. So they're going to take it all the way. Are the people going to allow them to take it all the way? I think that's the bigger question.
The people of Russia, the people of Ukraine.
People of Russia, the people of Ukraine.
I don't think he cares about what the so-called global community thinks of him.
But what about
how much further you can go when you're calling him Satan? You're acting like Satan. I mean, he's already, and he's 69 years old. I happen to think that he's on this mission that if his last act is to reunify the Ukraine to the mother Russia, that's been part of Russia for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and goes out the world thinking that he's Satan, but he thinks God likes him. I agree with you. I don't see him stopping, and I see it getting worse because, Larry, let me go to you here. Mm-hmm. Dadgummit, I watched Joe Biden, and folks, I promise you from my heart, I guess we won't know because this scenario wouldn't play out. It's impossible to play out. But I guarantee you, if we had a Republican president and he was conducting himself, he or she, like Joe Biden, I would be just as adamant, just as vociferous in my criticism of how how that individual's acting as Joe Biden. And you look at Joe Biden, and he's throwing these sanctions on Russia, yet you look at it and you break it down, and you know the sanctions really aren't going to hurt Putin like they're going to hurt the average American, especially our poorer Americans. Mm-hmm. So the question is flat out common sense. Why would you do these just to be symbolic when you wind up hurting? You're not going to hurt him. All those oligarchs they're going after, you know it, Guillermo, they got their money translated into cryptocurrency. And you wonder why Biden today announced he wants to have this studied, the government.
American crypto.
They've probably gone after these oligarchs. Yeah. They're not dumb. They didn't become an oligarch by being stupid. That money was transferred out. It's like the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You tell them 2 months ahead of time, we're coming in to find the weapons of mass destruction. Those things were in Syria within a week. There probably were chemical weapons there, but you give them a heads up. You're right. So my question to you, in such a dangerous time, I guess it's a two-part question. Mm-hmm. Why would you slap ineffective sanctions that are going to decimate our economy? And then with Putin, with Biden, what's his end game? Where does he expect? Where do you expect him to go? After all, he's dealt all of his cards.
Well, the hard thing for the American public to understand is that politicians live in a symbolic world. They don't live in the real world. And as a result, they don't take real world consequences into account unless it affects how they are viewed and for future elections. So when you live in a symbolic world, you can do symbolic things. And those symbolic things, from his mind, it doesn't matter if gas goes to $6 a gallon, $7 a gallon. I'm doing the right thing from his perspective. And so we're going to get hurt in America. And you got to understand another thing. We were funding both sides of the war. We were buying gas from Putin, giving him billions so he would have money to fight the war. And we were providing arms and support to Ukraine. So it was actually an American war. You know, we were funding both sides of the war. So it's absolutely insane. And in spite of all of that, what happens here in America is you have symbolic groups that say things, let's support Ukraine, let's do these kinds of things. But I'll tell you what, when I talk to the average citizen and just in conversation in my neighborhood and things, what war? You know, what are you talking about? They kind of know about it, but until it really starts to get them, they don't care. They don't care. There's such a disassociation with politics in America right now because everything that comes out is so extreme on all sides, right and left, that all they want to know is my pothole going to be fixed, that kind of thing. And then you got to understand, Putin will never allow himself to be embarrassed. So for him, going into the war and going after Ukraine is not embarrassment, even on a world stage. So, but if he were to withdraw, that's embarrassing. He will not withdraw. Remember, his dissertation was to unite the USSR when he wrote his dissertation and got his degree. So that's where he's going.
Let me ask my second question to both of y'all. I'd lost track of what the second was. That's why I played it off. I was improvising that other's question. At this stage of the game, this very, very, very dangerous game that we're playing with probably, and I take all the politics out of this. This is just pure analytically speaking, watching it. The most incompetent administration I've seen in my lifetime, and probably the most dangerous. I put this above the Cuban Missile Crisis. I really do, with what could go wrong, what could possibly go wrong. And the President of the United States right now, doesn't he, Guillermo and Larry, have a responsibility to de-escalate this situation, not escalate? For example, he was given on his lap. A lot of people didn't report this. The media didn't report this. that Zelensky yesterday said he'd be willing to sign off on never joining NATO. That's a big thing for him.
That is a big thing.
He would be willing to do that. Where was our president going, having a press conference saying, we have movement here towards peace? No, he gets out and starts, saying how they're going to backfill MiG jets in Poland. He's got Anthony Blinken coming out, which could be construed by Putin and China
Act of war.
as an act of war. You have a NATO Article 5 country sending MiGs, and who's to say the Russians say, well, how do I know they're Ukrainian pilots? How do we know? We shoot them down. How are we going to do? They're not Polish pilots that really know how to fly these things. And Blinken's asked by a CBS reporter, Guillermo, this has been, Poland's going to do this, offered to do this. Do you consider it something that you would greenlight, or something you would be scared that would escalate? Without a beat, he said we'd greenlight it. So my question is, where is the leadership to de-escalate this thing? Because as Larry said, I happen to agree, and I think most analysts agree. You're not going to insult and threaten Vladimir Putin into leaving Ukraine. You're going to make it worse, which equates as a simple equation, which equates to more loss of life in the Ukraine, more dead people, more dead kids.
Yeah, well, the question is a good question. I think
It's a long question.
It was okay. I think a lot of conservatives, and especially the further right folks that I hang out with, it's easy for everyone because you hear, oh, Biden has no leadership. This guy's incompetent. He's senile. He has no idea what he's doing. I think the better question is, and I tried framing it yesterday like this too, is I believe there's good in everyone. I believe there's good Democrats. I believe there's good independents. I don't believe, like a lot of conservatives do. I'm pretty far right. I don't believe that every single Democrat wants to see the destruction of America. I don't believe, and some might, just like there's fringes everywhere. The problem with Joe Biden is that he's not necessarily, and I know everyone on Facebook is going to get mad, he's not a bad guy. A lot of these progressive liberals or Democrats are not bad people. They just don't know what they're doing, and they don't have the capability in their toolbox to comprehend or do it. You can't put me in brain surgery. I won't know what to do. You're going to hand me the knife or the butter, whatever. I won't know what to do. I could sit there all day. I could watch YouTube videos on brain surgery. I would not be able to have a successful surgery. Joe Biden and his administration, even though they've been in politics for that long, I can hang out in the surgery room and in the hospital. I still wouldn't know what to do. The problem with Joe Biden is that he is an ineffective leader, but the bigger problem is he doesn't have any capabilities. He doesn't surround himself with people that have the capabilities.
That's the key
to
too.
solve. Yes,
Bingo.
Because leaders are surrounded by people. You should be surrounded by people, and they hated Trump for this. Trump was surrounded by people that hated each other. So they were able to Trump was able to hear every side of it. He was able to do that because he had people around him saying, Mr. President, you should do this. No, Mr. President, you should do this. That's the problem with Joe Biden. That's the problem with this administration. And I want to encourage conservatives, listen, don't vilify Democrats because Democrats are seeing the exact same thing. There's a lot of Democrats today waking up with buyer's remorse. I think there's a lot of, and I've seen it in their eyes.
There's no doubt.
I've seen it in their eyes. There's a lot of people that are just choosing to stay silent. I believe they feel guilty for their vote, and they feel guilty for everything that's going on. I know that was a long answer for
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's more Kristen Sinemas and Joe Manchins in that party, and we have to support them to stay in that party and reform that party. But Larry, Guillermo, I think, brings up a really good point. A president or a leader of any kind, in any position, is only as good as the team.
Absolutely.
Because there's an old saying, I believe it to be true. Leaders don't get things done. Leaders create the circumstances for other people to get things done. The head coach on a football team, as good as Tedford is, or as good as you would see McVay out there for the Rams, he can't go out there and block and tackle and catch the ball. But he can make sure his team has the best
Equipment.
Assistant coaches
Yep.
that know how to coach those positions, the best equipment, the best preparation.
Yep.
And to do that, and the same as the President of the United States, hate Reagan or love Reagan, he understood that, and he had a philosophy and a way of doing things in terms of putting together a team. He felt you should get people stepping down into government service. They actually had a higher situation, so it was a step down for them. Like George Shultz, Secretary of State,
That's a
had
good point.
demonstrated all
Such
of
a good
these
point.
skills.
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger in their negotiating. You go forward to, you had James Baker in there as well. You had even George W. Bush. You had a Condoleezza Rice. You felt very confident with Condoleezza Rice over there in the Middle East, brokering peace, because she was a step down to take that job. You've got this team of ciphers for Joe Biden. He's like twisting in the wind. You got Kamala Harris. You send her to the border and she flips you the bird, say, I'm not going.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Guatemala. Basically, that's what she did.
Exactly.
You can't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. I mean, that's exactly what it was. And then now it sends her to diffuse.
There's been a monumental miscommunication breakdown between the president and vice president, between the president and the vice president's people. So you're seeing this now play out on a very grand stage, because now we got some very, very real problems. I talked about the president not having the leadership capabilities, but the problem is now you infuse this because they're
compound it.
You compound it because you're seeing and Kamala Harris.
Did my voice just go up 3 octaves?
It did.
It compounds it.
You got Kamala. Got a cackle, and then you'll be like, no, but
Kamala make me do that. Make me go from Bubba to Pee Wee Herman in one statement.
And they know how bad this is, and they know that she owns this as well, because she's kind of the accomplice, whether you like it or not. So, can I tell you one good thing?
Please,
because it's hard to find. Oh, that's Larry's job.
Yeah,
I have not heard the thing. Tell me
news.
I have not heard the thing.
You tell me. Well, I don't think it is. But
go ahead. We're going to go to break after your. I'm going to brace myself for this pearl of wisdom.
When a game is tied in the NFL, no, I'm joking.
I'm tracking with you.
So with this Russia-Ukrainian thing, before this, I thought in my mind, you know what, America's losing standing. We're not going to be the superpower. Maybe we're not the superpower anymore. Maybe we're not going to be here anymore. I want American exceptionalism to be in charge of the world, because good things happen, bad things happen, but bad things going to happen no matter who's in charge. Better things happen when we are in charge. Mm-hmm. And so I've been fearful of China. I've been fearful of Russia. I've been fearful of all these other countries, more China taking down our standing in the world. It seems to me that maybe with the 24-hour news cycle, we've built up the capabilities of Russia, China, and all of these countries in our minds. And the media has bought into this, and China's rising, and they have a stronghold on everything. And then I look at Putin, who supposedly, he is a bad guy. He's not a good guy. But he can't even, no offense, but he's having trouble taking over a country so I'm thinking to myself, could it be that maybe my worrying about our standing in the world is ill-founded, because maybe these other countries have been built up so much that they're really not as big and powerful as we make them out to be. So for me, and maybe I'm out in left field with this, maybe our world standing is never going, well, I don't want to say never say never, always avoid always, but maybe we'll always be that superpower, because these countries, maybe it's all just, it's all inflated.
Before you go to a break, let me give you one comment that I think's pertinent here. All of Biden's advisors, in my opinion, are political, not governmental. And I think that's a huge difference.
Big difference.
Yeah. And if you are governmental, you're doing what's good for America. If you're political, you're doing what's good for the party.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, have you ever asked yourself during these times if we were ever invaded?
I was waiting for it. Good news.
Really.
Your question. Yeah, I mean, your response was really good. That's what I've been thinking about it.
Because China's been pretty neutral.
Well, the thing is, I think we have not. It hasn't China. I don't think China, with all their Belt and Road stuff, everything they're doing, they're a competitor. We've had competitors before. They're beating us at our own game. We've bought our standing in the world. After World War II, we were the only superpower.
Yeah.
We were a manufacturing juggernaut. We made everything here. We were China. We made everything. Everybody bought American. Remember, hey, made in China was a joke. Made in Japan was a joke. And then Japan got their stuff together with cars and started outdoing our cars. and then I think it's us. We brought ourselves down, because it's like a family, a spoiled family that inherits this big trust fund, the generations, and you don't value how it was made. So what you do, you have all your necessities paid for. You got a social safety net. You've got food stamps. You got welfare. You've got Social Security. You've got how bad can it get, and then you can start letting your mind go on things like gender neutral bathrooms or pronouns or CRT and things of this and racial injustice when you have the most diverse country on the face of the earth with races getting along like never. The experiment was working and is working.
Right.
And you get into these little frivolous obsessions in society, and you never have, like you mentioned the other day, I think it's woken up the millennials and the Generation Z when they see a country actually invade. A lot of them thought that was just BS. No country would ever do old school invasion.
Yeah.
Tanks ruling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Obama said that at one point in time. Oh, we don't have to invest in the Navy.
It never,
No, exactly.
And by the way, it's a question, where is Obama right now?
I saw that on your,
Where is he? Now, come on. Here's a world on the. You're a leader. You're a voice. You came out to come down after Trump and criticize the because what? The future of the country is at stake. Well, the future of the freaking world's at stake.
Yeah.
With the guy saying, I'm going up to level 2 on launching the nukes.
Yeah.
Where is your brilliance? No, you're running like a scalded dog because your reputation. You don't want to get close to Biden. If you come out, you're going to have to say things that's going to.
Yeah.
Oh, we're on.
Let me
We
share
are
a concept.
on social media. That's all right.
Yeah, it
I
is.
believe that.
Really quickly, it's interesting in jobs. You have people who the common saying is they rise to their level of incompetence. Okay, so
That's
they
been
were
said about me.
really, really
I heard
good.
that. I was wondering where I heard that before.
Really good number twos, really terrible number ones.
Yes.
Okay, and we're
you-
seeing a little bit of that right now.
Oh, you see that a lot.
And in the world leadership stage,
Yeah.
you have some countries that are real good number ones.
20 seconds.
You have some that are absolutely terrible when they're number twos and try to become number ones.
Zeke Bratkowski,
That
backup
level of
quarterback, came
incompetence.
in and saved parts of
10 seconds.
but as a starter.
Yep.
Oh, boy, shield's going too fast. Like doo-doo.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now, 559-899-1550.
And welcome back to Alan Autry No Retreat, otherwise known in my mind as my little chunk of heaven here on earth, with Larry Powell and Guillermo Marino, my two good friends. Dad, come and pinch me. I'm dreaming here. I'm having such a good time. Okay, before we get to that,
Hey, let me say something, Alan.
Yeah.
That I think, going back to NATO, just real quickly, NATO is underfunded, and Merkel helped start that whole thing in Germany.
yeah, you were talking about this before the show.
And she got dependent upon Russia for energy, so she undermined her own country. And now the new leadership in Germany is starting to call that out, which is interesting. But we're also overestimating the assessment of the ability of NATO, because NATO doesn't really want to defend anything. They just want to hold off anything. So,
Good point.
Yeah,
Very good point.
They just don't want them. As long as Russia goes other places and stays out of us, we're
I
fine.
hate to say this,
You know.
Larry, Guillermo, folks, I hate to say it, but honest to goodness, it hurts my heart to say this. Push comes to shove, it's NATO schmado. France is going to watch out for France's best interest. Germany's going to watch out for Germany's best interest. Italy's going to watch out for Italy's best interest. They're all nationalist. The only place you
Absolutely.
can't say nationalist is United States.
Ew. Preach it.
That's the only place you
Preach
can't
it.
say the best interests. How do I know that? Because France came out and said, we're not putting the sanctions. We're going to keep importing the oil. Germany says we're going to keep importing the oil. There's people. It's just the way it is. As Guillermo, you pointed out, it's a cold, brutal world out there. You have to live in reality or die in your fantasies. And in here in this country, we have to wake up, grow up, and realize what stage we're playing on here. These sanctions are going to hurt nobody but the American people. It's not going to stop one bomb from falling on Kiev. Not going to stop one hospital from being blown up. Do not kid yourself. I think that's the only way out of this, Guillermo, is to think maturely.
You hit it on the money.
This.
Every country's going to worry about themselves except the United States. We're the only country that'll say, no.
And you've hit this a lot on your show.
We'll let everybody
at 4 p.m. every day, by the way.
You
go ahead.
We'll allow the American people to suffer because, listen, we're the superpower. We've done some bad stuff. And we have this guilt mentality when there's a Democrat president, like, hey, we're going to apologize to the world for our success. We'll take the burden on, where every other country is going to worry about themselves. Here's the scary part. And it has kind of not kind of, it is. There's a local.
Well, everything's scary. The scarier part. You're going to go up in levels of scariness.
Yes.
I'm already puckered so high you couldn't put a pin up my rear.
Oh, just wait.
Go ahead.
The scary part is, and we're seeing, and you mentioned Germany. Germany became dependent on Russia, and these countries are becoming dependent on other countries. Who's becoming dependent?
Yay, globalism. Yay, globalism.
Yes. Yeah, but who's becoming really dependent on other countries? And I mean, it's a no-brainer. We have. But here in the Central Valley, there's this mentality in the United States. You know what? Let's be green. Let's just import everything so we can say that we're green.
And look what Germany's doing. How many times you heard that?
Oh,
let's be Germany. How many times you heard this from the
let's be Germany. Let's be Finland.
From AOC.
Yeah, let's be these
Put
other
Germany in the
countries.
picture for it. They're eons ahead of us.
Oh, yeah.
In a new Green Deal, and look how their economy's prospering.
Exactly.
Yeah, look at them.
Exactly. And when I look at the Central Valley, when I look at the Central Valley, we don't take care of things that we can do here. The Central Valley is the breadbasket of the world. There are countries that come over here every year for the Ag Show that wish they had our soil. They wish they were here in the Central Valley and they had our climate and everything.
And by all means, let's just outsource our food supply.
And that's what we're doing, which is insanity. And you two gentlemen, you know I do an Ag Show.
Gentlemen, who came in, Larry?
you know I do an Ag Show every single week, and I've done it now for 2 years. And every single week we talk about regulation coming down. And my friend he's on the left. He's been on the left for a long time. Irrespective of how many times I try to bring him over, it just ain't working. But when it comes to ag, he's further right than I am. And he says, Guillermo, the problem that I'm seeing now is farmers don't want to grow anymore. You're having these big corporations come up into the Central Valley, start buying ag land, and they're really going to try to grow, what they can. And if not, we're going to have all this fallowed land. You're starting to get fruits and veggies that we used to be the best at here coming in from China and coming in from these countries, these that don't have human rights, that don't have these third world countries, and we're importing our food. The United States has to stop importing. We can export, that's fine, but we need to stop importing everything.
Could you imagine? You say can't get any worse or scarier. And I've said this many times as mayor. I said this a lot. It's one thing to outsource your oil and see the devastation it caused to put energy, which makes everything go in your economy, under the control of other countries that you're not energy self-sufficient, and how damaging that can be. That's one thing. But how about your food supply? Mm-hmm. You put your food supply in the hands of somebody else. You imagine Joe Biden going around begging for food. Going to South America, Africa, which these far left folks want to make our world's farms. Yeah. Now, imagine doing that. Then you have a real crisis, because that same Russian philosopher that I quoted the other day, I said, just let America go. They'll self-destruct. You won't have to come in with tanks. He also said that the next war would be over wheat, meaning food. Yeah. As the planet said, that would be the one. Very great points, guys. I want to touch on
last quick one. Look at the PPP. That's the Paycheck Protection Program.
No, let's not look at that.
No. Look at the PPE. Sorry, PPE. Remember when COVID was at its height, America got a real big slap in the face. Wait a minute, all this stuff is made in China.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
How about antibiotics?
Yeah. All in China?
92%, exactly.
And listen, we were able to manufacture right away because we had manufacturing plants. Good luck trying to start growing your own food on that mass level when you haven't been taken care of, when you haven't irrigated.
A very good point.
You've got a big problem.
This naivete on the left that you can say, okay, let's outsource our food. And if it doesn't work, those great experiments that they like to do, we can just wrap it up. They don't know the sophistication that goes in to producing food on a mass scale. And you get rid of that knowledge, that institutional knowledge. And I look at some of our farmers, and I get on them. Because there was a saying, a good farmer buddy I went to grammar school with, big farmer, said, deep in the heart of every farmer, there's a developer. So they're just looking for the time to sell their farm. And that is
the truth.
I want to get to these 2 points here, guys, because quite frankly, you're both mesmerizing. I want folks to hear your take on these things. Have you been following this thing with Brittany Griner, the basketball player over in Russia? It's been detained because she had hashish oil in her. Okay, she's over there. She needs to be brought back. I'm all for that 100%. But you do a little further looking into the story, and apparently she's been going over there for years. She's making $1 million, $2 million a year playing in Russia. They pay them well. This is the same Brittany Griner who said, I am not setting foot on the court while the national anthem is being played ever again because this country is so bad, so systemically racist. Well, I'm sure on that on those basketball games in Russia, they played the Russian national anthem before the game, and I'm sure you were not in the locker room. You were outside standing at attention to that Russian national anthem and all that national anthem stands for, and you thought that was perfectly all right. Now you're sitting over there detained in a foreign country. America may not be looking too bad to this young lady, huh? Maybe, perhaps.
You know, there's an
I wish her to come back. No harm. Don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of folks think this way. America's horrible, systemic racist. You need to tear it down, build it back better. And you go over to another country and see how things are, and it may change your attitude a little bit.
Well, there's an old saying that where I stand on a subject depends on where I sit. And you start changing your mind when it's impacting you directly, rather than when it's just an abstract concept. Abstract concepts are real easy to agree with and disagree with. Reality is much more difficult. And when reality hits you in the face, as it is with Brittany a little bit right now, but I'll tell you what, you lose your faith as soon as she gets back. So faith in America, because I need help now to get back. But as soon as she gets back home, retreat to the familiar, right back to the same stuff.
Let's hope she doesn't. Hopefully, we'll see.
And it's sports is an interesting beast, and it's about comfort. The American athletes are extremely comfortable.
You didn't have the offensive line I had. That's wrong. I had a great offensive line. I just couldn't move. I'm sorry out there.
Alan misstated.
Dick Himes, everybody, you guys were great.
But that's why they're able to do this. Last Friday night, Jose Ramirez, boxer, we had boxing in town. And I don't know if you listened to my show yesterday. I was watching the coverage by ESPN. And I've never seen ESPN do this. They do these segments where they got to fill time. If the fighters aren't ready or a fight ends early. And they did this segment twice. On Jose and boxing. And they did it with the Klitschko boxers. And it was a well-produced. And there was a segment in there that said boxing athletes like, the Klitschko brothers going over there is different than American, and they showed Colin Kaepernick and they showed a basketball court. It's different when these boxers stand up for something than these. And they put the picture of Colin Kaepernick, yes,
I missed that.
And the NBA court.
It's gotten into ESPN. You mean Farlek, WFL, ESPN did that?
Yes, and I was sitting there, and I was in amazement because and then they went and they had to fill airtime, and so you had these two announcers talk about, it's different. These American athletes, they're comfortable. These men who are also comfortable, they're boxers, they're fighters. They have to get up off the stool every single round, and right now they're in a very unfair fight. They're in Ukraine, and then they started talking about it. But it was interesting because I'd never seen ESPN. They produced it. They called them out and said, "Hey, you woke athletes, these guys they're the real advocates because they say it." And they're over there willing to risk your life, their lives.
That's very, very interesting. I missed that. It's very surprising ESPN would do that. I want to get to this poll that was taken. I forget who did it, but it was a reputable poll. It's been reported by several of the outlets. But it asked the American people, the young people, would they defend the United States if it were attacked? And the results that has got people kind of surprised and startled that less than 50% of Generation Z and millennials said they would stay and fight if America was attacked. Now, on the surface, you go, oh my gosh, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me. You know why? You do a little research, and you find out that our fight for independence, only 1/3 of the American people were for independence. 2/3 were comfortable being enslaved under King George. It was a minority who understood that liberty and freedom was so essential to the human soul that they were willing to fight and give their own life for it. And you look at look at Ukraine. Look at Ukraine. People don't understand. You see this exodus, 2 million people. You don't see young, strapping men, and you automatically assume they're staying in Ukraine out of their own volition. The fact is, and the Ukraine government acknowledges, you're not allowed between the ages of 18 and 60, and if you're a male, to leave that country right now. You must stay and fight. The government will not let you go. So everyone that's there fighting are not necessarily the Klitschko's, the Lomachenko's. Now you say, well, how often? Well, hold on. Here in America right now, you have to sign up for a draft. When a war comes, most people don't want to fight. They don't want to die.
Yeah.
They're mostly are freeloaders and cowards. That's what the majority of the people are in the country. It doesn't matter what time. Now, maybe over there during Braveheart times and Mel Gibson, it's a country, baby. But I guarantee you, 10-1, we're back in that village going, go get them, Mel. Go get, win for us, fight for us.
Let me tell you,
and
what
would get
happens.
out of the country if they could. It's just human nature, and I think 49%. Quite honestly, I like that number.
Yeah, it's
That's
actually
just
a
my
pretty
take.
good number. But here's the truth of
They
the
were
whole
criticizing
thing.
the number, Jim. I know you're looking. Guillermo's looking at me like, now, what have you been smoking?
I'm willing to sacrifice your life for my freedom.
I'll fight to the last drop of your blood.
That's kind of, when you get comfortable in life without sacrifice on your own, when my family doesn't have to sacrifice and things, I lose my real desire to know even what sacrifice is taking place by other fellow Americans. And I diminish the sacrifice they've given. And I think it's a huge problem for us here in America because we've got so much that we've basically given up the thought that we may have to give something up in the
Just
future.
think about human nature. Just goes, it's counter to it.
Yep.
You have Patrick, I think it's Patrick. You have one guy over here. You got a bunch of people. So you got 10,000 people. And over here, Henry says, give me liberty or give me death. And the other dude over here says, I want to live because I want to see my grandchildren. I want to have a full life and a healthy life. Let's see how many go where. I mean, it's just, and I guess my point is, God bless the courageous minority that during difficult times guide us where we won't go ourselves. Give us the courage that we don't have ourselves.
Yeah.
That we're willing to get up and, I think back to D-Day, Guillermo, when, because a good buddy of mine was Charles Durning. He was there at D-Day when those amphibian boats opened up where they just suffered. Saving Private Ryan was the movie about that D-Day invasion. Eisenhower came to speak to them the day before or the week before, pretty much told them. That's why I love Eisenhower so much. So look, a lot of you are going to die. He told them the truth, but you're going to die for the cause of freedom, and liberty, and for your kids and grandkids. And they knew that, and they preferred tomorrow to today. They preferred giving their own lives to their kids and grandkids having a quality of life, not growing up in poverty. But that's a minority of people that have that gumption, and a lot of them probably wouldn't be there. As they're over there flying, going, if they could have jumped out and swam, some of them would have.
Yeah. Well, when you give that stat, you're saying, hey, it's a decent. It's about 50%, 49%. When I look at that stat, I am saddened because I want to think about the person behind the numbers. So that would mean 50% of this country doesn't have anything to fight for, doesn't believe that they have something worth risking your life. Because you mentioned our heroes on D-Day. If you were to tell me, hey, listen, if there's a bunch of yous, you could do it. You could save freedom for your family. And I would look back and say, I love my family. I love my wife. I love my sisters. I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
So you have 50% of the country that essentially has no one to live for, no one to
that's
fight
history,
for.
But Guillermo, that's been the history of mankind. slavery has ruled mankind more than democracy. We're the only country that really has ever had true democracy to the level. That's why we call it the Great Experiment. And in those cases, the ruling kings or emperors and such dictators had an army, but numbers-wise, that army and that dictator were totally outnumbered by the populace. Yet the populace didn't have the courage to come up and say, let's get together and overwhelm this dictator who's hurting us, who's taking away our freedoms. They just acquiesce and give in. And you say, what are the reasons for it? Well, they don't have that higher purpose. Freedom and liberty doesn't mean as much to them. They just want to survive. And that's, most people don't have a higher purpose enough to give their life.
Is there a correlation between that and our churches now and Christianity falling behind and not enough people going into the church? There's less Christians now.
Yep.
I agree. I think that's one reason for sure, because
there's fewer Christians in certain denominations. The evangelicals are actually continuing to grow, which is an interesting thing. But just in Christians in general, you're correct. But here's a statistic that I don't know if you completely said this. 68% of that group of 49 to 55 who would stay and fight, 68% were Republicans.
I was curious.
57% were independents, and only 40% were Democrats. That's according to the Washington Times poll.
Okay, that was the poll. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And 38% would flee. But think about that. 68% of those who would stay were Republicans. 57% were independents. 40% were Democrats who would stay and fight. That's pretty scary.
And that's a Washington Times?
Washington Times, yeah. When asked that question,
somewhat reputable.
Would you stay and fight,
it is
or
telling.
would you flee?
40% of Democrats.
Yeah.
It's that's an interesting. I want to play that Bryce Mitchell here as we go on. There's a lot of different takes on this war, and this kid, this UFC fighter, won a big fight last Saturday, and he was asked in the post-fight press conference about his position on Ukraine-Russia. Apparently, the reporter had heard he had some pretty adamant views on it, and it just shows one take on this, and I think it's worth listening to. I'm not saying I agree 100%, but some of the stuff he's saying makes sense. And I think it kind of sums up what a lot of people are thinking about this war right now. We got it.
Well, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole Russia and Ukraine situation.
Here's my first thought is I'm not going nowhere to fight none of these wars for these politicians. I'm staying at home, and when the war comes to Arkansas, I will dig my boots in the ground, and I will die for everything I love, and I will not retreat. If this country's invaded and everybody's saying, well, we gotta evacuate, we gotta leave, I will not. I will dig my boots in the Arkansas soil, and I will fight for the people that I love, for the land that I love, and the way of life that I love. But I'm not going overseas to fight. I don't know what's going on, to be honest, brother. I really don't. There's so much stuff, and I don't think nobody knows what's going on fully. There's been so much political corruption in that area. You got Biden and his son making a ton of money off of and using our tax dollars to bribe their people. That's treasonous, in my opinion. So you got Hunter Biden and his son using our tax dollars. Hey, if Ukrainian government, if you don't do this, we're taking your tax dollars. He shouldn't be giving our tax dollars to that country anyway. We got veterans out here sleeping on the street, and you're going to give our freaking tax dollars to these Ukrainians and all. Brother, I don't know what's going on over there, but I'm not going over there and fighting. And God bless anybody that's over there that's fighting. And I hope that this just gets solved. And man, I don't like war. You know what I mean? I don't want people dying and all that stuff. I don't want to be, but I don't know what's going on. There's so much stuff that I think that's corrupted that we just don't know what's truly going on over there. And I pray all those people are safe.
I hadn't heard that.
He may not be as eloquent.
I was pretty
say.
articulate.
I would say,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the woke far left, you say anything with a southern accent, you're good.
No.
And but I think the kid articulated very well what's on a lot of people's minds. Like we mentioned, what do you believe? I don't know what's going on.
Such a good point. You have to have an obvious enemy or an obvious bad thing. You have two bad things, going on. That's what's hard for us is we like those stories that have good against evil and good wins at the end. When you have evil against evil, because not everything going on in the Ukraine is good,
by a long shot.
Yeah. So when you have evil
they
against
dissidents.
evil, why in the world would you want us to step up in ways, like we're being asked to do. It doesn't make sense. We need an obvious enemy that is contrary to all of the things that we believe in, and we don't have that right now.
Well, I think Putin's doing a good job of making himself that. I agree with you, though, there.
Yeah.
The lack of verifiable information is really something we
in the
have
information
to take,
age.
We've got it, but we've got to take that in consideration because you don't have anybody de-escalating. Biden needs to stand up and say, listen, I'm going to call for a meeting with Putin. See if Putin have all of NATO say, now let's sit down and talk because, hey, Mr. Z over there, Zelensky said, I won't join NATO. That's freaking big news. Biden, he should be on that like a starving dog in a meat house as a de-escalator. That's what presidents do. They don't churn it up and cheer for war, especially against the nuclear power that has, by the way, more nukes than you do, Joe. That could destroy us more times over than we could destroy them.
Without a doubt. And I think what we always have to remember is it's normally not like this. The presidents on the Democrat side have not been this bad. Like you said, hey, this is probably the worst in a while. Because even if you had, I would take, and I would take a conservative president any day, but I would take any of the,
I take Clinton right now. I take Clinton
I would.
right now.
And that's the thing. I think everyone needs to realize it's not, we really shouldn't be in this situation. We have a lack of leadership. Things should be much different, but they're not. And it goes back to that famous saying now, elections have
consequences.
Well,
you got to understand, too, we're also in a position where Biden is actually playing into Putin's hands by arming neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. So that one of those big groups there was patterned after the brown shirts. So, that's in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
So we're sending weapons in there, and we're really supporting the neo-Nazis. So here you've got a left president supporting right-wing things in Ukraine. I mean, it's absolutely insane and hard to understand.
Don't worry, Kamala's over there. She's gonna figure it
Well,
all
the
out.
thing they got to do with these sanctions is unleash the energy sector so we can become energy independent. Go in there, work with the fat cats because the country needs the fat cats now. Just like Roosevelt, who vilified Wall Street, that's where the term fat cat came from, President Roosevelt. And yet, when the war broke out, he knew they didn't have the capacity to build the tanks, the armored vehicles, the airplanes, the ships. And he engaged the fat cats. They came together. They worked together to win World War II. And that's what he needs to do right now, unleash the energy sector. You may hate them. You may be these fat cats. Let them come in and save not only this country, but perhaps, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say the world. Because so goes America's leadership. So goes this whole.
They're not called entrepreneurs for nothing.
Yeah.
They get it.
That term used to stifle me for years. I'd read it, entrepreneur. What's last comment? We're running out. Jose,
like Larry said, I wish these politicians would govern instead of being politicians, because if they govern, they would do good for America.
Yeah.
Well, it's just saying you can't teach a pig to fly. It's not going to work. You're just going to tick off the pig. So the only thing you do is come to midterm, send him a big message, get somebody in there, and I hope it's Ron DeSantis with a conservative Congress. And I think that's the best chance for America. Folks, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in here. Appreciate it. I want to give a shout out. Oh, gosh, I got 14 seconds to H. Twan on YouTube. You sent me a wonderful note. And I appreciate it so much. I hope I got your handle right. If not, I'll get it right tomorrow. Alan Autry, no retreat. See you tomorrow. Yeah.